I thought I would kick it off by saying that one of the things that beyond your book that I was so present to in your discussions with other people is what I'll term sort of the era of moving from people's interest of being superhuman to being very human. And I think that is a really important part that you expressed with your book about these mothers. Clearly, we know they are all the work that you had to do to piece together all of the information that you found, since there was such sparse information about these women. But on top of it, I know that for women at large, but especially Black and brown women and mothers, there's this thing about strong Black women and we got to be strong. And Pete and I have been in this discussion with, we talked about with Neil deGrasse Tyson, actually one of the guests, we talked about how we're moving out of this era of needing to, only know about the big accomplishments and the big results into let's all be more human, more decent, more all of the facets of our personality. And I think that, like I said, there's so much for us to cover in your book, but I thought it was such a wonderful ringing into this era that we're coming in to know all these parts of one another. And especially because Black women have, just like we talked about with Kathy, we've lost so many of our sons. Does that mean we failed? Does that mean we weren't good parents? No, it's like part of a whole system. And so one is we just honor you so much that you've brought up that conversation. And we want to hear more, like, how did you come into that in writing this book to be so invested in humanity first?
Yeah. I love that as a first question. So beautifully put. And it is something that I care deeply about and I was really prioritizing in the book. So I'm grateful that you noticed it, because this book is a fight against dehumanization generally. I'm really framing the fight against the ways in which we treat people as less than human, and then also the ways in which what happens when we make them more than human, these superhumans, and the layers that Black mothers face. This is already something that universally mothers feel, that everyone seems to think our needs no longer matter, or that I often call it the magical minion who's like running around and no one notices how the house is getting cleaned or the dinner is getting cooked, etc. And then on top of that, to think of Black womanhood and the ways in which we've been tricked. This is a form of oppression to tell us we are supposed to handle this all on our own. There's no one that's going to help us through this, when instead there's something very humanizing about saying, as a Black woman myself, as a Black mother myself, I see you, I celebrate you, I honor you, we have each other, we are human beings, and we don't need to be any more than that. And we also deserve to be treated constantly as the human beings who we are. And dehumanization is so clear when we think about Black motherhood. Often if I say someone's being treated as less than human, or even when we see in our national rhetoric, organizers saying we are being treated as less than human, many will say, oh, that's dramatic. That's definitely not what's happening. You're taking that a little bit too far. But when you really look at something like Black motherhood in the United States and its relationship to slavery, and how remnants of this awful system continue to play a part in our lives today, you cannot deny dehumanization is happening. When you said to somebody legally, you are the givers of non-life, you are the givers of property, that is dehumanization. We are the only group in history who have been told that our children were not ours, and that our children were not human beings, and therefore we weren't either, that they could just be taken from us or sold. And what that does in terms of relationship to where we are today as a country, thinking about police violence against Black bodies, and how clearly it still is this feeling of this life matters less, or this life is property, or this life doesn't deserve to be treated as a life. And I think you can just really think about dehumanization when you look at motherhood, this symbol of creation of life. And I think about that beyond birthing children. It's also in our creativity, it's in our art, it's in our activism. So this book is a celebration of Black women's humanity and humanity more generally.